European Union is trying to do everything right now. They're talking about how to send more money to Ukraine. They're talking about giving Ukraine a loan that is not from the Russian assets, but they're not going to take it back until Russia pays, for reparation of Ukraine. How likely is that, in your opinion? I don't see Russia paying Europe for what they're paying to Ukraine.
Nor do I. And the people who ought to be paying, of course, are NATO leaders and Washington in particular, with empty pockets, but we act like we don't have empty pockets. What I'm hearing that is extremely disconcerting is that leaders like Starmer, Macron, and Merz, and particularly the latter, are planning on using, and this really frightens me with regard to Germany, I truly mean that 5% that's coming in for defense to not only rescue very weak and even struggling economies, particularly in Germany, but to reinvigorate them with defense spending. And the CEO of Rheinmetall the other day essentially came out and said, I'm going to catch Lockheed Martin and Grumman, with a gleeful smile on his face. I don't need to go very far to tell you what that means in my mind, at least. I've lived a long time historically. I think that's very dangerous. And then the second thing I'm hearing, which I think is very dangerous, is that having observed what the United States is doing with respect to Venezuela, particularly piracy on the high seas, is what I would call it, taking a tanker, that there are people in the European members of NATO right now who are seriously talking about doing something like that in the Baltic. And they've even used words like that would be an Article 5 event. That's very disturbing.
Yeah. Larry, your take on Europe and the behavior of Europe. We know that there is a lot of talks right now in Europe about Russian assets.
They could take a picture of them, record them, and then put them in a medical journal as a perfect illustration of insanity on display. I mean, it is so divorced from reality, yet in their delusions and in their fixation on Russia, this enemy they've created in their mind, they're literally sinking their societies. And look at Germany in particular is the one that's so puzzling. They have, they're destroying their industry. They're and the European leaders are insisting that they must pay more for gas and oil instead of less. And it's one thing to make these threats against Russia, and Russia is taking them seriously, as was evidenced today. Putin did his traditional year-end press conference, and he made a point that that Russia can't sit there and ignore the fact that Starmer and Macron and Merz are talking about going to war, attacking Russia, and so Russia is preparing accordingly. But for them to say that, but then not have the infrastructure in place, not have the industrial foundation needed to sustain a modern war, not having the advanced weaponry required to have any chance of prevailing against Russia, and then the complete lack of any casus belli. Russia has not been out interfering in the European elections. It's just the opposite. Russia hasn't been threatening to invade Europe. Just the opposite. So, um, all we can conclude is this is like a temporary insanity on their part. But I think the combination of economic uh, disintegration that's taking place will ultimately rein them in. They won't be able to continue this. You saw today, the EU had been pushing to steal the Russian assets, use that, give it to Ukraine as if the money's going to make a difference. And they finally said, okay, no, we're just going to go out on the international market and borrow this money and give it to Ukraine. Uh, it's just it makes absolutely no sense.
Takes you back to the old aphorism we came up with the other day. Yeah, I reminded you of it, that America was going to give weapons it doesn't have to the Europeans for money they don't have, to the Ukrainians for soldiers they don't have. That sums it up.
Carl, I think the point that Larry was mentioning is important, the strange behavior of Germany. Do you see the German chancellor working, representing the German people, or he's representing BlackRock?
I'm going to compare two historical moments with you. The one I know quite a bit about, the other I'm learning about. One was when Jim Baker and George H.W. Bush and Colin Powell and Francois Mitterrand and Helmut Kohl and Maggie Thatcher and John Major and a host of others, including Gorbachev, were talking seriously about the reunification of Germany and its retention in NATO. Helmut Kohl, a very astute German in my view, was very worried. He lusted for that's not too strong a word, for the move of Bonn to Berlin. He loved the idea of all Germans being in a single state again. He was very aware of the significant meaning of that move to Moscow. And he was very leery of making it for that reason. The only reason that I saw, and I wasn't privy to all the discussions, but I did get back briefings from Powell on most of them, when he saw that the United States was serious in his mind about not going an inch further east with the NATO alliance, that pretty much sold him on it. And he was having a problem with the $80 billion his own people, U.S., were telling him it would cost. And of course, ultimately, it cost twice that much. But that was a very serious German. Merz is not a very serious German. Merz is a mercantile globalist, is what Merz is. And that's why I said what I said about Rheinmetall and about this business of building Germany's economy back on the back of the defense industry. Very disturbing, because he's the kind of individual that would actually do that if he could get away with it. Now, I don't think for a moment, I hope I'm right, he's going to get away with it, because the German people are not going to buy that. And that's going to put him out of office pretty quickly. Then you have to consider, has he started this momentum, and has the German industry caught hold in a way that it wants to continue, because it does see it resurrecting itself to a certain extent, and the AfD takes charge. And you suddenly get an AfD energized to stay in power and sees that as a political mechanism to do so, because it is making the German economy look a little better. That's dangerous, I think.
Well, and just let me just add in there the real problem that's manifest in Germany and repeated in the UK and France. You don't have a majority party, a majority a political leader in any of those countries. They're all minority coalitions. So this speaks to the fact that there is no consensus about what to do going forward. And so in that circumstance, it's sort of like the person that shouts the loudest gets the most attention. Doesn't mean they have the most support, but they do get the most attention.
And I would add to that, Nima, you may have seen the piece that talked about Staatsräson, what we mean by raison d'etat, or reasons of state, that Germany is trapped in this sort of Staatsräson with regard to the Holocaust. It can't get out of it. It seems to be unable to shed it, and it's making current strategic decisions based with regard to Israel in particular, but the whole situation in general. It's making decisions based on its guilt and its consciousness of that guilt made into raison d'etat, which is ridiculous. I don't want to see them do that with, as I said, with this arms buildup, which is, I think, coming. I do think it's coming.
Larry, here is what Keir Starmer said yesterday to the British people.
Putin's appetite for conflict and for chaos is already there, and it will only grow. And Russia is already menacing our skies, our waters, our streets, and our national security.
Yeah.
I mean, God, How could nothing that he said was true, but he says it and believes it. That's what's so shocking. Um, what has Russia done to the crime level on the streets in the UK? In fact, it was Keir Starmer who, as a prosecutor, declined to prosecute Pakistani rape gangs that were raping British women. Looks to me like it was more Keir Starmer who was the big threat to the UK, not Vladimir Putin. Good God.
Nima, it reminds me of when Tony Blair, for God knows what reason, except that he was really worried about getting the vote for the second resolution in the parliament, even though he had a massive majority at that time, goes out and proclaims that Iraq could hit London in 45 minutes. You know what? Condi Rice called Colin Powell and said, "Where the hell did he get that?"
Yeah.
It was such a ridiculous statement.
But Carl, they can make that argument toward Russia. We know what's going on with these sort of rhetorics in the United Kingdom, in Germany, in France. But if they take decisions based on this, propaganda machine, and they're talking about, last week they were talking about the preemptive attack on Russia if they decide to attack us.
Well,
They know they cannot fight Russia without the United States. What if they go in that direction in order to bring the United States in?
I did a podcast yesterday with a gentleman who was asking me a similar question. And I mentioned the fact that I had at that time just heard the fairly powerful rumor that there were certain people talking about an Article 5 incident that would cause the United States to commit, and obviously cause others in NATO to solidify around it if it did. And that's the kind of thing that I think is extremely disturbing because, as Larry pointed out, they aren't anywhere near ready for that. And they're counting on the big guy to be ready for that. And I got news for them. They hadn't been checking their sticks very much.
Yeah.
The United States is not ready for that in any way, fashion, or form, especially not against a battle-hardened military with a revived and very well-functioning industrial base in Russia. It's, as Larry said, it's insanity.
Well, and I can't emphasize enough that all of these kinds of statements by Merz, Starmer, even the ones from Trump, they're designed to try to shape public opinion and to try to get public opinion to the point where it will support bellicose, belligerent acts by any of those countries. And that was driven home to me last night. I get there's a group of guys in the neighborhood where I live, and we have there's sort of a town square, and so we meet and smoke cigars. So two of the guys are Vietnam vets. One worked with U.S. Army intelligence for years after getting out of the service, and we were joined last night by a sort of a new fellow, and he's in the world of finance. So we're not talking to somebody who's somebody who's supposed to be familiar with world events, because when you're managing financial issues, you can't just stay local. And man, he was repeating all of the talking points about Russia being basically a communist state, an economy that is collapsing. And I just sat there and I said, that's bullshit. I said, you are repeating. I got to learn to be calmer in these situations. But this is not a stupid man. Just to underscore to me that the effectiveness of the propaganda to paint Russia as this menacing threat. Because this guy was saying, yeah, Russia is out meddling in all these other countries. And I said, stop. Where? And then he starts struggling, trying to say where. And then when you start pointing out some inconvenient facts about NATO pushing to the east and NATO, in fact, I asked him, I said, would you be okay if China and Russia formed a military alliance with Mexico and started conducting annual military exercises? Well, he goes, absolutely not. I said, great. then you understand Russia's point. No, it's different.
It's always different for the empire.
So that's what we're up against.
And Larry's right about the propaganda. It is everywhere. It's everywhere. As I was talking about Germany and Staatsräson, well, a big part of our raison d'etat right now, reason of state, reason to exist, is Russophobia. It's all across the country. You go to Texas, you go to California, you talk to people, and as Larry said, they don't know what they're talking about, but they know they don't like Russia. And they know that Russia is interfering in everybody's elections, and they know that Putin is a scoundrel. And they think he's sitting on top of a make-believe kingdom, that it'll collapse at any minute.
Yeah.
It's astonishing how many Americans believe that. Of consequence, Americans, business executives, financiers who believe that for whatever reason.
Yeah, and that's why I say that there's no chance that of a peace agreement of Russia agreeing with the United States and letting Trump take the glory, because let's just assume Trump is able to get an agreement with Russia that Russia is willing to live with. I don't think that's possible, but let's just make that assumption. The political class and the public, the vast public attitude wouldn't support it. The only way it would happen is if Trump negotiates a deal with Russia, signs a treaty, that treaty is submitted to the U.S. Senate and the Senate approves it. And that's the only scenario in which there can be a negotiated diplomatic settlement to this war. Without that, there will not be an agreement that's worth the paper it's written on.
And you better believe that Lindsey Graham would stand on his toes and filibuster and everything else to stop that from happening. Takes a 2/3 vote. So,
yeah, there's a lot of money at stake for him.
Yeah. And I fear others too.
Yes,
we do.
Yeah.